As a licensed mental health therapist, I have spent over 12 years trying to answer the most important question in my entire industry, which is, why can't people act right? And obviously, as one does, when you want answers to a question, you turn to science. And so in my years of studying the brain, I have learned that the brain really only does 3 things. It tracks information from your immediate surrounding environment. It looks for patterns in that information and tries to recognize patterns. That's the first thing it does. When it identifies and recognizes a pattern that makes sense or has a meaning contained in it, it tries to identify whether or not that pattern has anything to do with it. And then the third thing that it does is it tries to figure out if it can impact or change whatever that pattern information is, okay? So here's why this is important. Think about how you operate in the world. How do you work? You walk around, stuff happens, you try to figure out what it means, you try to figure out if it has anything to do with you, and then you try to figure out if you can impact or change what's happening in your environment to get some basic needs met, like food, water, relationships, whatever you're looking for, right? All that information in your environment that I'm talking about comes in many forms: tactile, vibration, etc. It also comes in waves. You know what these are? These are sound waves. Well, actually, this is a physical picture of a sound wave, a couple of sound waves. Sound waves are actually a mechanical vibration that your inner ear detects and then determines patterns and extracts information from that vibration. Light waves are also frequencies that contain information that your brain absorbs, detects, identifies, looks for patterns, right? Sound waves are physical and require a medium to carry them. Light waves are electromagnetic and do not require a physical medium. And you know what else is electromagnetic and doesn't require a physical medium? Radio waves. We're going to come back to that. So not only are you constantly taking in information and trying to determine what's happening in your environment, whether it's relevant to you, whether you can impact it, not only are you satellites, you're also radio stations yourself. You create and produce waves, electrical frequencies, okay? Well, how do we look at the electrical frequencies that you produce? We stick little sensors or electrodes on your head, or in some places called hospitals, in your head, but I don't do those ones. I just put stuff on the outside, no craftsman drill involved. And we plug those wires into a little box we call an amplifier because it's actually amplifying the little frequencies so they can be big enough that we can take them apart, look at them, post-analyze them, and turn them into information. 2 of the things that we are looking for in these EEG frequencies, anybody know what EEG stands for? Electroencephalogram. Electro means electrical, encepha means brain, and gram means picture. Literally a picture of the electrical activity in your brain, EEG. When we are looking at physical squiggles on the page, well, I guess these days it's a digital screen, thank goodness. You know, I've actually met people who spent years reading these huge printed reams of EEG. Yeah, I was born in the right time. So when we're looking at the physical squiggles, we're looking for 2 characteristics from which we derive the majority of the information. We're looking at amplitude and frequency. Amplitude essentially meaning the size or how much power or energy is in the signal, the volume or the signal strength. And the second one, frequency, is how quickly or rapidly is it cycling up and down? How frequently does it cycle in a second? Guess what AM and FM stand for? Amplitude and frequency modulation. So when radios put out information, when they put out signals, they are actually modulating elements of that signal to contain information. And this is how you can listen to different stations at different times, how they can play different things, how you can get different information. And if you don't like what the station's playing, what do? You change the channel. What if we could do that with our brains? Yeah? So, one of the interesting things about brainwaves is that you make a lot of different frequencies. You're producing a lot of different sizes and speeds of brainwaves. And each of the different frequency speeds or sizes actually correlate to states or feelings or conscious experiences or degrees of engagement with your external environment, right? So for example, if you've got nice big slow waves and everything's going as expected, we're probably looking at sleep. If you've got a lot of really big slow wave information in places we don't expect it to be, at times we don't expect to see it, you might have a brain injury. If we have a lot of little fast, excited little fast waves in places and times we expect to see it, you're probably pretty engaged, pretty on point, paying a lot of attention. I see a ton of beta happening right now. It's very exciting for me. So you're on point, but if you have a whole lot of beta in places we don't expect to see it, at times we don't expect to see it, you might have anxiety or any other kind of fun neuroses like obsessive compulsive disorder. So parts of your brain can become more or less engaged, are supposed to become more or less engaged based on what's happening in your environment. So when things are occurring that you're supposed to be interested in or engaged with, your brain's supposed to make faster, more interested engaged waves. And when there's nothing happening, your brain's supposed to kind of chill out, conserve energy, and wait for something to engage it. And when you try to go to sleep, it's supposed to shift into an even slower state and chill you all the way out so you can go on the charger. So I was on this little internet website some of you may have heard of called Twitter, and came across this pithy little observation by this really interesting photographer, art historian person that I suggest you look up later. And it really kind of struck me because for me, a brain scan is a playlist. When I take a picture of your brain and that's the wrong direction, and I am looking at what you have going on, I've essentially got your greatest hits in front of me. If you spend a whole bunch of time playing the blues, I'm probably gonna know. If you spend a whole lot more time on that really hyperneurotic dubstep channel, I will also probably know. And what this allows for me to do as a clinician is to figure out what parts of your brain correlate to the functionalities you're attempting to either work on or improve or calm down, and to what degree is your brain engaging, either hyper-engaging in certain frequency activity that keeps you really locked on to particulars, or what parts of your brain maybe are not engaging sufficiently so that you can actually approach or connect with whatever that particular is that you're interested in. So how does all of this relate to relationships? Okay. Think about it maybe like this. If you play one channel for a pretty long time, maybe at top volume, and you just sort of hang in there with it for a while, you learn all the songs, and then maybe you don't play it for a while, but it comes back on, is it really easy to kind of naturally remember how that song or that genre of music, that particular beat, that playlist? Yeah, we fall right back into it because your brain prioritizes resources based on what we pay attention to. So if you frequently pay attention to a thing, or a thing frequently draws your attention, your brain attempts to routinize and make efficient whatever neural pathways and or networks are required to engage with that. So if you keep thinking about the same person over and over and over, then your brain's gonna routinize and make super efficient and easy for you to continue thinking about that person when any little tiny thing that possibly even tangentially reminds you of them happens. And it's so hard to not keep going back and thinking about the same stuff. Well, how do we take a brain that's essentially playing that same song over and over and we get it to change the channel? one of the things we can use are sound waves, because your brain actually prioritizes incoming sound vibration. Remember I told you that sound is a physical medium? Essentially, it's a physical, tangible, sound waves are a physical and tangible experience that creates a vibration that your body totally keys into and uses to regulate central nervous system arousal. You don't turn off your ears when you sleep, and your ears are 360 degrees. So that means it is a monitoring alert system that your brain has all the time, telling you what's happening in your environment and whether or not anything has changed that you should pay attention to, right? So because your ears are right here next to your temporal lobes, it goes straight into the bottom of your brain and then back right where your limbic structures are. Those limbic structures contain things like your amygdala and lots of other fun words, which essentially just means the parts of your brain that try to keep you alive. So those sound frequencies come in and your central nervous system is constantly modulating its arousal and its interest to changes in the sound waves in your environment all of the time. I mean, any of us have experienced this. You're hanging out at a party, there's 100 people, it's super loud, things are happening, and across the room, you hear somebody's voice get high-pitched and a little angry. Almost all of us will pause just a minute and just make sure none of that stabbing that Dessa was talking about starts to happen, even if it does improve their love life at least. So because we are so tuned in, what we're able to do is identify the areas of your brain that are way too engaged or maybe not sufficiently engaged, and then create a sound feedback program that modulates pitch and tone specifically keyed to the activity of those brain areas that we're monitoring live. And when those brain areas start to behave a little bit more flexibly, we're able to shift more easily, we're able to modulate in ways that we would expect. When they start to match more of those expectations, the sound waves change, and it becomes this feedback loop that simply mimics the feedback loop we live in all the time with the world around us. And your brain goes, "Oh!" And the second half of the story comes later.